Okay, we're live on YouTube.
Are we live? Yes. Okay. Cool.
It's on YouTube. I didn't check Twitch and Facebook, so hopefully those are great. Yes, so it's February already. Oh, I can't believe it's February already. It's just sinking in it's the second month of 2021 now. I still feel like it's just 2021 just started. But yeah, welcome everybody to Ruby Tuesday KL 78 and Penang. Oh, I don't remember the number. Sorry, Gui. Let me share my screen and go through the keynotes. Right, so as I said, welcome everybody to Ruby Tuesday 78. Of course, as always, brought to you by Engineers MY for sponsoring StreamYard and KL Ruby Brigade. As always, a lot of our activities are on Facebook. And Meetup is where we post all the events. So make sure you are in Meetup following us. GitHub for any code related. We use Slack mostly for, I hope the screen is not tearing. At least I see from my end it's tearing. So, oh no. Okay. But yeah, we use Slack mostly for during code clinic. So, sorry, I confused that with Discord. So Slack is where we usually chat of all our things. So you can come in and join. There are a lot of channels. Sometimes we discuss about random programming questions and that sort of thing. So yeah, Slack is one of our main communication points. Sorry, let's see. Right, Discord, as I said earlier, we use it for code clinic. So whenever we have code clinic, feel free to jump into the Discord server. You want to introduce yourself? So everybody, I'm Gui. I'm here today with Tristan and Gui from Penang. So first reminder, comment or chat. So we can see all the comments coming through Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. So if you all have any questions, feel free to just leave a comment or chat. The second reminder is actually something we kind of just formalized. The event code of conduct. So we actually had, I think, an external someone wanting to speak, and they asked us about our code of conduct. So I don't think, based on my understanding, I don't think we have like a official or very formal code of conduct. We've always been unofficially following the Ruby community code of conduct. Right? So I'm just putting it out here saying that, look, we're formally following this code of conduct. I think all the while we kind of been following this already, and I think in the spirit of Ruby, like Mina's one, right? Maths is nice, so we are nice. So yeah, I'm just putting it as a more formalized thing. Okay, hiring shoutouts. Tristan, do you? I saw you post up.
Yeah. Rapid River is hiring a software developer. So if you're doing Ruby and Rails and some JavaScript, then hit up careers at rrsoft.co or go to rrsoft.co and look for the job posting there, or just ping us here on YouTube or on Facebook or on Meetup, or like we hired someone from India because she happened to be in Malaysia and she attended one of the Ruby meetups, and she actually posted on the meetup group, hey, I'm interested in the hiring shout out, and so I'd like to apply. And so that we actually hired her from, well, we got her contact and we started the hiring process from there. So it really, like, if you're interested in not just in Rapid River, but any of the hiring shoutouts in any of the past hiring shoutouts as well, just mention it on Meetup, the Meetup group. Not necessarily on the same episode, but just mention it any of the episodes, or on the Meetup group, or on YouTube, or on Facebook, or even on Slack, and I'm sure you'll have a good experience there.
Yep, adding on top of what Tristan said, there is like a jobs channel in Slack. So if you're not in there already, you can join into it. I'll do a shout out for Faith. Faith is hiring backend engineers working on Rails. If you're looking to switch language, Faith is hiring front end engineers as well as data scientists as well. So if those areas pique your interest, right, look at Faith's career page and just apply accordingly. Any more shout outs we want to give?
No.
Gui, you're not doing a hiring shout out. I remember you were saying something about it.
Yeah, but not really Ruby related. It's more on DevOps. So we are
I
looking
see.
for DevOps doing security stuff.
It's okay. You can always like shout out. You can do cross promotion with all the meetups. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. Moving along. So we don't really have any full-fledged talks this week. So it's really just gonna be three of us talking slightly about some of the things that we have been doing or some of the questions that we have and see what others are doing as well. So yeah. So they are kind of, I think each of us has kind of like a topic ish. So we'll just banter around all those and just share what we've learned and that sort of thing. So I guess I could start off with psychic badges. Hold on, I was trying to open a link earlier. Right, so I recently discovered psychic badges. So it actually allows you. Okay, sorry. Before I go further than that, right? For those of you who don't know, Psychic is a job scheduler we usually use in Rails, or you can use it as on its own as well. Right, it's a gem that you can use for scheduling and running jobs. So Sidekick has this feature called batches, where you can kind of batch jobs together, and you can run them in a sort of like parallel serial sort of flow. For example, one of the use cases I'm working on now is I need to process a huge CSV file, right? Each line inside the CSV file needs to do something, but they are sort of idempotent in some sense where the lines are not related to each other, right? They just read one line, do something, and that's it. So what I'm trying to do is like, okay, read the file and then batch it out so that you can run this job. Let's say there's like 100,000 lines, right? So you can run 100,000 jobs and then wait for all this to complete and then run the next step. I won't go into detail like how to use it because it's pretty much in the GitHub wiki. But I guess a better visualization would be something like this. So like for example, job A. And from there, you want to run job B to F in parallel, and you don't really care about their execution order and that sort of thing. So you can run B to F in parallel using batches, and then it will wait till all are complete before it runs the next steps. For example, here G, right, and you can like do parallel, serial, parallel, that sort of thing. So yeah, I'm still figuring out how to use this. I'm not very familiar, but when I heard about it, I was like, oh wow, okay, Psychic actually does this. The not so good thing about this is batches is actually a paid feature. Like you need to be subscribed to the Psychic Pro.
Yeah. I was going to ask, like, is this part of the free Sidekick? Because this is useful, but I never really knew about it, and I'm seeing the date. But now that you mentioned it's pro, then yeah, that's probably the reason why I haven't heard of it so much, because I don't know. I don't think we're at the stage yet where we need pro level.
Yeah, but I think someone actually did a open source drop in on, I think it's this one. Yeah, it's basically the implementation of Psychic batches in a separate gem that you can use. So it's like a drop in replacement for the API from Psychic Pro. I haven't actually used this before, but when I saw this, like, okay, so technically there is an open source variant of this that people can use. So yeah, I think that's about it for my sharing.
Yeah.
Well, are you using it for anything
Yes.
right now?
So as I
I mean,
mentioned
like,
earlier,
this is a production thing. Like, is it very important that you use batches, or were you just trying it out and see if it's more efficient to use Psychic batches? Because I'm sure you can just do like sequential processing as well, right?
Yeah, actually, I could do sequential processing. The thing is, I'm expecting. So the use case is I have a very huge CSV file, right? And rather than let it run through the file one by one, I just swarm the number of lines. Like just spawn one job for one line and just process it. But I have to wait for everything to complete because I want to generate a report at the end of it. Right? So this workflow kind of helps with something like this, but not as complex. But yeah,
Yep, Gui, you wanted to ask something?
Just now, the Psychic Pro GitHub, can you go back to that?
the open source one.
Not the open source one, the paid one.
Oh, I don't think they give the source for the Pro. I mean, they give the source,
Yeah.
but it's not
So
publicly
on the
available.
right hand side, you can see complex job workflow. Yeah, click on this. You go in. They also explain how to can do it in Psychic without Pro.
Mhm. Ah,
Oh yeah,
cool.
yeah,
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 because
yeah. Actually, I do. Yeah.
yeah, that was probably something that you could do. I guess Pro just makes it easier because it has its own like official API. It's just that with like your own DIY, then you have to take care of like your because this is almost like concurrency threading. Basically, you join multiple threads together so that it blocks on the completion of everything. You have to do your own primitives there on top of the Sidekick concurrent processes. But I guess Pro just makes it like easier.
Yep.
Yep. And
So I'm
one
guessing,
thing.
yeah, I'm
Sorry, go
guessing
ahead. Yeah.
Fave pays for Sidekick Pro.
Yep. Yep, we do. Yeah. Well,
Okay.
one thing I realized looking through this is one thing good is there is like a callback implementation for Psychic Pro.
Hmm.
So, for example, like you want to trigger a separate workflow if the job fails, right? You can on failure run this and pass this option to it. So, like, okay, this job A fail, right? So call job C and pass in like whatever parameter. But on successful, you will call like maybe I'll call job B on successful. So I don't think that's like this is a Psychic Pro feature, obviously, but this is one of the good things. So you can kind of like chain the thing together as well. So yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. The callbacks.
Yeah, it's not available on Sidekick regular, but I guess you can implement like a watcher or something, like because the failure will automatically retry, and then I guess you need to like mark that job as a failure and then do something else. So it's not as convenient. Pro makes everything convenient, but of course you're tied to the paid version.
Yeah. There is a cost to it.
Well, convenience, but then again, that also means the developers don't need to re-implement something that's been done before. So that's basically what you pay for. So it's actually a good thing. It's just that some people don't really think about it like as a time spent, like the cost of time spent,
Mm-hmm.
and so they don't actually support these. Like, oh, Sidekick is free. Why do I have to pay for Pro? But it's actually all of these conveniences that make things a lot easier. That
Yes,
that
yes.
you want to pay for, especially for a large uh, a large company where you want to like you actually have a budget for development, and instead of hiring more developers, which is like a recurring cost for like it includes training, and then you have a lot of risk for like variances in performance, then why don't you just put that budget into a subscription to a service like Psychic Pro, where you have support and you have like the person, the author of the library, to actually update and keep on working on the library. And that already took like a lot of the a lot of the difficulties of your developers creating new code just to support a particular workflow.
Yep.
Hmm. Nice. So how did you hear about it? Were you just researching about this, or was this
No, actually,
recommended by someone in
yeah,
your?
one of my colleagues actually told me, oh, because I was talking about the problem, and then my colleague was like, maybe you have you heard of psychic badges? Your workflow seems to fit this. Maybe you want to look into it. And he told me like, okay, look in the code for these few workflows. They are using badges. Maybe they'll give you a good idea. So I was like researching into this and getting to understand it better. I'm still
I'm
like,
not sure though. Like the way you described it, I'm not sure that you're actually taking advantage of the full batches. I mean, it's already there, so might as well use it, right? But from what I can see, like Sidekick can already fan out concurrently all of the like all of the lines. Like you can saturate your queue basically with like just going through one by one and then just queuing them, and then let the sidekick workers take from there, right? I think the only thing that you want is the only thing that's missing is the block at the end. Like basically you join all of the threads together so that you block at the end, and then you spit out um, a report, which might be a bit difficult, especially for large work, because that means you have to store all of the results in memory somehow, because you have to block all of them. They stored, and then you have to like collate them and do processing on them. So that's a lot of memory that scales with the number of jobs that you have. So it increases the more lines in the CSV, the memory requirements also scale. So you might even want to just not do Sidekick batches itself, but maybe just, I don't know, do a database query, like a database update, which is atomic, and then just update it there so that you know that okay, these are like basically you're doing the summing in a database which is already atomic and has the concurrency primitive that you wanted, which is like atomic updates.
Yeah, actually, that's what I'm doing now. So the original problem was because there is a limit on how big the CSV could be,
Yeah.
right? Because what you mentioned, right, there's a memory limit. So previously, when they were trying to upload like a 5,000 line entry or 8,000 line entry CSV, it would either fail, or there were problems, there were inconsistency as well. So what I'm kind of doing is, because we want to support like maybe 500,000 line in a single CSV, right? So what I'm doing is actually writing the lines into the database and use the database like a queue of some sense
Yeah.
to like, okay, just check the status of this line. If it's been processed, don't touch it. If it's if it's like pending, then work on it, and it will like. So the problem becomes now I'm reading a lot of DB, but I think it's small enough. Like the DB reads shouldn't be an impact.
A DB doesn't have to be the same DB as your everything else in your customer database. You can have a DB specifically for jobs. Just ask your DevOps, spin up a DB separate from the main DB that connects to like that you can use for your like job updates or whatever. And Rails now has, I think, like a way. I think we talked about this before, like a way to instead of using the octopus gem, like to do different accesses to different databases on the
Right,
modules.
sharding, right? I think Rails 6,
Yeah.
6.1 or 6 that they implemented. Yeah, like we're not on Rails 6 yet, so technically I can't.
Yeah, but there are gems, there are libraries as well.
Yes.
But so we're like Rails 6 basically just formalizes the thing. But each model, like the model that you're using for the job, can be set up to use a specific database outside of the production one, because it's just a job anyway. You're not like something else needs to, like you want to maintain the uptime of the other database. Yeah. So sorry, those are just like things that I can think of, because I did this
naturally,
not exactly the same thing, but we used to process CSVs as well of a few million people, so we were encountering the same issues. And so but again, we didn't have Sidekick Pro that time, so we actually spent some time doing ourselves. We didn't need to batch things, but we did need to store intermediary values so that we can like operate on it, because we're interested in the so it's basically a map sum or something. Like you map through, you do particular operations for each of these jobs, and then you sum, basically you create a collation or collection, like you perform an operation on all of the results of all of these jobs. So yeah, those are the issues that we faced. That was some time ago though, so I don't really remember now how we exactly did it. Right? Yeah, that sounds good.
All right. Yeah, I guess probably that's all for me then. Let me remove this. So I guess we could move to Gui. You were talking about hosting Rails app on a budget.
Yeah, the chipstick way of hosting Rails application. So our use case is staging. So it's not production, it's for staging so that the front end developer have access. So in terms of cost, because staging means you don't have much people using it, right? But we want to make sure it's as similar as production. So for staging, we want to know how to configure certain things. So the configuration should be almost same as production, just that the specs can be as cheap as possible. So let me see whether I can do this. Share. Let's see. Okay. So for can I add this? No, I cannot add. Never mind. Oh yeah, there. So for me, I'm using light sail. So why light sail? So for me, I prefer something to be a fixed cost, right? So light sail, it's there, and it's monthly basis. You don't able to like scale it by yourself, but it kept your cost fixed. So 3.5. So if we go to EC2, right? So EC2 calculation, if we get minimal one vCPU and 0.5 gig of RAM, you'll get T4 Nano, and similar spec, you get 20 GB, right? For the hard disk, it will cost you 5.07 USD per month if you use by per month.
Actually,
So
the light sale one used to be that the lowest amount was 5 US.
yep,
It's been a long time since I did the AWS, but 3.5 is a lot cheaper. Like now you have an even cheaper option, which is, I mean, it's not a lot of memory, but
yeah.
if you
So
optimize your thing, right?
correct. So the memory part, you are correct. So I spin up this instance, right, and I try to build Rails. It failed because
Yeah.
not enough memory at
hmm
all. It directly failed in bundle install.
Especially it. Oh, in the bundle install,
Yeah.
and I'm sure your Webpack. I'm not sure which Rails version you're using, but Webpack or Sprocket's asset compilation is going to definitely fail.
So I'm using API based only, but it just not gonna work. I think it's
Ah,
Nokogiri. Nokogiri already failed. So it's very weird because I start a container inside, right? I'm using Docker Compose. So I try to find out why is it failing? Is there library missing? And then I start to seeing a lot of weird things, but it's not related though. So eventually I found it's a memory issue. Then
mhm.
how I solve it? I use swap
Well, I
because
guess
it's right.
yeah. It's an actual VPS. So yeah, if you can continue for a bit, and then I'll talk about the different kinds of VPS after this.
So this is the very cheaper way of getting like your RAM. So because RAM is costly if you set up VPS. So and for light sail is using SSD, so it's good. If it's using hard disk, don't
hmm
don't do it.
Yeah.
You will see a lot of bad performance. But if it's SSD, why? Yeah, just use it. It's bad for your hard disk, but it's a VPS, so yeah, just
So
try
the
and
AWS VPS is actually good because they have this kind of like it's a virtualization where you actually have the full machine virtualized. There's a different kind of virtualization like with OpenVZ. You'll find it a lot on cheap non AWS virtualization like server hosting. Basically, if you find server hosting, I think Exabytes has something like that as well here in Malaysia, which is OpenVZ. I think they have KVM as well. Usually KVM, um, which is like similar to what AWS is doing. The KVM versions are more expensive because you actually have the allocated memory is like fixed. You don't have like something like burst. So one way of server hosts to um, like to earn more money is they will sell you over provision you, right? They will sell you 2 GB, but actually your system only has like 512 megabytes. But because not everyone is using their systems at the same time, then you can burst to 2 GB, and then you have like your fair usage plan where you can't use more than 2 GB for more than 30 minutes, otherwise we'll kick you out or something. But this one, if you say you get 512 megabytes, then you get 512 megabytes. If you get 2 GB, then you actually get 2 gigabytes. You're not sharing it with other people. And that's why you can also use your basically your
SSD.
swap Yeah, because in OpenVZ, for example, they prevent you from using the swap because you're basically the resources are shared amongst each other. If you thrash the hard drive, then everyone else in your cell, your cluster, is actually going to have like a bad performance because you're basically like sharing things. But this is like separated out, and most likely they're load balanced across the network cluster, so you can get away with it, and everyone else is not going to suffer a lot of issues.
Yeah. So because I'm also hosting Postgres in this server
Mm,
also, so both Rails and Postgres is running on this server, and both of them starting. I think also Nginx. I have Nginx, uh, Postgres, and also Rails.
Are you doing Docker for Postgres, or is it like installed
Yeah,
application on Docker? So
Docker with
everything Docker
Mountain.
Compose.
Yep.
Nice.
So
Yeah, it
it
makes it
mount.
easier to transplant the whole thing somewhere else, right?
Yeah, it's supposed to be using RDS because I want to make it more can be deployable to DigitalOcean, for example.
Hmm.
So it's all in a Docker compose so that I can just move around whatever I want.
Nice.
It works fine for me in my use case after I enable swap. So the build went through, and then yeah, things went through, and I think that's the cheapest way because 3.5 if you use it for the first month is free, um, and it's not as
Oh,
cheap
it
if you use EC2, right? EC2 is
doesn't a yeah,
yeah.
doesn't AWS have like the free tier where you don't use a lot
It
of
has
resources, you get
free
the free?
tier for EC2, T2,
Oh.
T3 micro,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not for Lightsail. Lightsail doesn't have that
Oh.
free
I
tier.
wonder if you can get away with the free tier on EC2. I mean, it's
Um,
more expensive, but if you're still in the free tier, then it's fine, right?
But that's just
it's
for the first year, right? I think after that, after your first year on AWS, you no longer
Ah,
get that. Yeah.
well,
yeah,
I
12
mean, you
months.
can always get a new account, right? It's
Um,
all Docker anyway, and then
Yep, correct. So for live
yeah,
sale, they also have the burst mode. Means even though it's burst mode for processor, so if you
yeah,
don't use certain processor power, it will allow you to do a burst mode. Like during build or compilation, you need more processor. It allows you to use that. I think very neat for light sale server. Although it says like one core, it actually allows you to burst
mm,
usage.
that's
Um,
quite cheap. 3.5 for a full-on server remote.
and the
Um,
transfer is quite good, like one
mm,
terabyte of transfer. I think
yeah,
okay for staging. Yeah.
yeah, it's okay. I mean, if you really want to go even cheaper, you can do something like I forgot what's uh, the one where you you host it on your laptop and then it pipes it to an online service. I forgot the name. And then it's basically a proxy to your laptop.
Or is it like
That's
ngrok
probably
or
yeah,
HTTP
ngrok, yeah, something
tunnel or
like
something like
ngrok.
that?
That's probably the cheapest one that I like, cheap, like the cheaper option, but quite a lot of setup. But for three, again, uh, going to back to like paying for developer convenience, right? This is probably better since you don't have to keep your laptop on, for example. Just like pay 350, which is how much is in Malaysian ringgit, about 12, 15 ringgit or something a month. It's not bad. It's like a Spotify subscription, and you
Yeah.
actually
And
have something. And then you can even
you
put
pro-
like what, a VPN or whatever,
yep.
an
And it
uptime
allows you
monitor for your production thing. You can even put it
correct.
there.
And it allows you to have a IP address. So means you can
Hmm.
configure your SSL because
Yeah.
not a lot of VPS provider allows you to have like dedicated IP address. Now
Hmm.
they don't have much.
Oh wait, the 350 includes IPv4. It's
Yep,
not
correct.
IPv6
No
because
IPv4.
IPv4 is expensive. Like it's now they're
Correct.
setting it for $1 per address now.
Correct. So it allows
Mhm.
you to have IPv4, which is good. Like 3.5, you have an IP
I don't
address.
know if it's good because everyone should like move to IPv6 soon, and this is like causing us to keep going to IPv4. But okay, I mean it's cheap. Like if you again, if you're just like for the stuff that it includes, it's quite cheap. 350 includes IPv4 even.
Yeah. And for that, we can configure Let's Encrypt. So this, there's a link for you. Like, it's very easy to go through it. Basically, it compiles everything in the Docker, and we are using certbot. So certbot allows you to just request an SSL from the Let's Encrypt service, and then you are able to receive that. So there's a several mode to do that. I think let's see.
Did
This
you install the cron job that they have where like because it
um
expires quite quick, like it's 3-month certificate, and then
yeah, it's
I mean that's the
around
last time I did it. Yeah.
yeah, it's around 2 months. So there's also a limit. You cannot just keep on making requests. So from here you see that it's um 20 certs per 7 days. So 1 week only 20. So once you hit that threshold, they
I mean
won't
that's a
issue.
lot for 7 days. If it's just one domain, you only need like two, like your
Correct.
naked and maybe something for www or something like that, and then do
Correct.
it
So
as a wildcard instead, right?
yeah, it depends. Like when people doing development, they are testing, right? So you accidentally make all of your requests, then you won't able to receive your cert. You need to wait 1 week. To prevent that, there is also a staging mode. So basically, you just need to add a staging. So staging will not have threshold, but the
Mm.
cert is not fully signed. So you're still getting warning on the browser, and this will basically they don't even need your email address.
Yeah. Oh, because I mean, they don't need to do an actual certificate authority there. There's a
Correct.
certificate, but it's not signed by a proper certificate authority, so they don't have to do, uh, like know your customer, a KYC on the
Correct.
certificate.
Yeah. So it's good for basically set up your configuration, like what bash script you want to write, which
Mhm.
file points to where on Nginx. This is one of the way for you to test it. After you get everything correct, then you go for the proper one
Yeah,
without the staging.
and
Uh,
you can add this to a cron job which runs once a month and renews tries to like you basically set it up. You forget about certificates because it will always be renewing anyway. So you don't. It's not like some sites. Like I think was it Maybank? Like there was some Malaysian site where people couldn't like access their data because the certificate basically failed, and Chrome or Firefox doesn't want to continue because like it says you'll be like submitting your password to a non-HTTP or like a badly signed or expired certificate or something like that. So there's no forgetting to renew a certificate because you basically just automatically encrypt the thing.
Correct. And all these are free, so you don't have to pay per se. If you buy from other authority, you need to pay per year. This is free. Just that you need to own that domain so that you are pointing to the correct IP address. I tried doing it local, it won't work at all.
Mhm.
Basically, because your local IP address is not the same as your domain IP address, so it could not authenticate. Even you put on staging, it won't allow you at all. So this needs to be a real staging server with a real IP, so that it will, in order it to work.
Or you can
Um,
talk to Unify or to Time Fiber and ask them to give you an external
Set.
IP address that's not netted. Yeah, then you can use that for your SSL cert.
Yeah, for free.
I don't know how
So
much a static IP is now. Do you know?
I don't think it's cheap unless it's IPv6. IPv6 they are okay with it. IPv4.
I think we all get IPv6 now. Like all of our devices get IPv6. I don't know if it's accessible outside, but everything gets IPv6.
Yep. Now we are using IPv6, but it is tunneling through IPv4 in order to access the
Ah,
network. So
I see. So it's
yeah,
not fully IPv6 yet.
yeah. We are sharing the same IPv4 address. If you want to whitelist your service, right? When you check
Mm-hmm.
your local IP, you're actually sharing that IP with a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
because
That's
unified going through one IP. So when that IP get blocked, a lot of people got into
yeah.
issue. Huh.
Yeah, so now I think it's not blocked, but Lazada keeps asking me to re-log in or like to slide to refresh or something. Like we've detected suspicious activity from your IP
Yeah, yeah,
address.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. Correct.
oh, this
The Google. Correct, correct.
is so annoying. But yeah, that's the problem with shared addresses.
Yeah, I think that's
Nice. Yeah, it's that's cheap. Like things that are free. So hosting is cheap. Uh, the what they call this the certificates are free. Uh, I think what can make your build times faster instead of like waiting for things
mhm.
to build is if you can build your own image locally, then just upload the thing. Then you don't need to even bundle install on the server. Like it just runs your image, right?
Yeah.
Like basically a push to your server instead of you don't have to put it on Docker Hub and pull from there. You just push you SCP or like use a Capistrano copy or something. You copy your image into the server with a particular naming
Mhm.
thing, and then restart Docker and then point to the latest tag or something like that, and then that should be fine. Or if you don't want to do a Docker image of your Rails environment, you can vendor your gems. Basically, you bundle install into a directory in
Mhm.
your application, and then you commit that. It's binary, but it's not going to change a lot anyway, so it's fine. It does make your Git repository larger, but that means when you git clone,
Mhm.
then everything is there on the server. The only problem there is that your environment should be the same as the environment you're deploying to because the libraries will be different. If you're using a Mac with an ARM processor, for example, then that means your gems are compiled with an ARM instruction set. That's not going to run on Ubuntu if you're deploying to Ubuntu, right? So the reliable one will be a Docker image. The other one will be vendoring, but you probably need to build it in a virtual machine that mimics your deployment environment.
So it's like CDCI using Bitbucket
Yeah.
pipeline for Git action, GitHub action, so that
Uh,
everything is.
yeah. Well, GitHub Actions, you can still, yeah. If you're using the local GitHub Action server thing, then yeah, you can do it like that. Because I think you can also like rent servers from GitHub if you pay them, right? So you can either
Mhm.
use your own machine for your GitHub Actions, or you can like rent servers from GitHub. But um, you can do it like as a GitHub action, or you can just like before deployment. I don't know what you use for deployment. Do you still use Capistrano for deployment?
Deployment for me, I basically just go there, Git pull, and then build
Yeah.
from
So
there.
it's
Because
the yeah, it's the
the
what do
old
you call
way.
this? Like poor man's deployer, right? You SSH into it, and then you run the thing on screen while you're doing bundle install or whatever, right? Which is fine.
Yep.
Yeah, so you can vendor everything, or you can just build a Docker image, SCP directly, and then that's it. If you're using Capistrano, then you can build it. You can build first, and then just transfer everything with the Capistrano copy mechanism. So those are ideas as well. That way, you like even though it's just a staging, but you don't have as much um, performance loss because you're not bundling, you're not compiling. Everything is just there to run in your to run your application on, and that might be something for production as well. Like I don't know what you use for
Mhm.
production, but that means you don't need to build anything on production. You don't need to increase the memory of production or use a swap file or something because
Mhm.
whatever you did on staging, you can also do in production.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. We are planning to use Bitbucket pipeline to
Mhm.
do the CDCI. So every time you push to that branch, it will auto deploy. So it's still doing all the automation part on
Yeah.
that.
I guess the only difference is that you want to build not on the target. You want to build somewhere else that's faster, preferably the laptop or the desktop that you have, or like a build server, local build server with like a lot of cores or something, so that it's faster, and then basically it's just copying the binaries over.
True. Yeah, yeah. As long as free, like
Yeah,
for Bit,
I mean,
Bitbucket pipeline, there's a few like 100 hours of free,
yeah,
so you can configure only
oh,
build in the staging branch and the
yeah.
production branch, so that you will save some time on that. Yeah, but that's the way to cheap
Hmm.
if you are running tight budget. Yeah.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah, lots of ideas. Fave doesn't have any problems like that, but us with startup people, we think of all of these things because we need to squeeze as much as we can out of the money that we have.
I mean, Faith isn't exactly swimming in money. I mean, we are cautious on our costs as well. So
Well, the thing is, you actually already have your DevOps budget, right? And I'm sure the people at your DevOps are quite good at convincing management to give them like more money to upgrade things because it's going to be faster, or it's everything's going to be much smoother or something. Yeah.
it's
So,
a different kind of skill, I would just say.
mm,
Yeah.
okay.
we agree.
Yeah. So, I'm not sure if you have more to on this, because we touched on MacBooks and stuff and desktops as well. So maybe we can go to the next topic,
Yep. The next topic.
unless you want something to add more.
Nope. I'm good.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So I wanted to ask you, like, because the next is like your development environment, right? So are you using a Mac, and is that your preferred development machine, or is that just because the company gave you a Mac and that's why you're using it?
Doing KL.
I thought he was talking to you, Kui Penang.
To both, or to something.
Okay, I guess I can chip in. Yeah. No, actually, I'm using my own MacBook. Let me see.
So
I am think.
you're not provided your own work laptop or work desktop or work machine or something.
Yeah, no. Even before I joined Faith, I was working in another place where they kind of said, "Yeah, use your own machine. We'll provide some allowances for it." So
Mm.
I've been on that. Actually, even Faith provides that benefit as well. So that's why I've been using my machine. Yeah.
Also, instead of them providing you a laptop, you can use your own stuff, and then they just pay you an allowance, like give you an
Yep.
allowance for maintenance, maybe, or repairs or something like that,
Yep. Yep.
or upgrades. Hmm. And you're using a Mac because that's your preferred environment.
Yep.
What was before this Mac? What were you using?
I was using a
What is
comp.
this one first? What is this one first, and then we'll talk about the previous one.
This I'm using a 2016 MacBook Pro,
Mm.
the first one that came out with the touch bar. Yeah,
13,
15.
15.
Yeah, right before that, I was actually using a company provided Windows machine. But before that, I wasn't doing development
Mhm,
per se. So like, okay, Windows can get me by what I needed to do. But then I was moving to like a development role, right? And like,
mhm,
okay, I have an option to buy my machine. At the time when I move jobs, it was like I get my machine and they give me allowance, or I could ask the company to give me a machine. So I was thinking, well, I heard a lot of people talk about Mac. I never actually own or use one, and I'm moving to a developer role. So let me try it. Of course, I went head in. Right, I got a 15-inch, which isn't the most cost-effective thing. But yeah, I've
mhm,
been quite happy with it so far. There was an issue around the similar batches where there was like after a while a blue tint would appear on the screen. It wasn't just
mhm.
my model. I think a few models around then had the same issue as well. But Apple was like, okay, just bring a machine in and we'll replace it for free and stuff like that. But yeah,
So you chose a Mac because every developer in your circle says you should get a Mac for development. Is that it?
this one. And another thing was that I tinkered a bit with Linux, right? And the thing I don't want to deal with was for me at the time it was a very hit and miss thing, right? So if you get a machine with a graphic card, for example, the graphic card might or might not work, right? I know
Mhm.
Intel's graphics was always supported, but if you get something with a graphic card, graphic acceleration might not work. And this was like maybe definitely 5 to 6 years back, right? I think a lot of things have improved since then, but 5 6 years back, I think it's still a bit flaky on like it's really hit or miss. Especially today, like all the machine learning stuff runs on Linux and uses NVIDIA heavily, right? So there's a lot of support. But 5 6 years back, to me, it was a hit and miss. So I didn't really want to get a Linux machine. Windows was a cheaper alternative, but I was like, I'm buying a machine, might as well. I try it.
Mm-hmm. I see. And how about you, Gui Penang? What's your current machine and what was it before? And was it your first choice or are you just forced to use it?
Okay, so my current machine is ThinkPad X240. It's very old.
Well, an X240. I mean, it's an
Yes.
X series, so it's small but in light. But it's a 240. It's like, yeah, it's old.
Yep, because I didn't buy a new laptop. This is the second laptop I get from during Cal. So my development environment is Ubuntu, which is Debian based. I use it since 2011 until now. I haven't changed. I
Just
like
the original Ubuntu, not the
yeah
flavor thing.
original yeah. So I like Genome specifically because they have like multi-screen. When you press the window button, it will have multi-screen for you to select. I like that feature. For using Linux, because I prefer OS that's almost similar to production. So whatever things that you might happen in production, it will happen right now, right during development. You know right away, and that's why I'm using Debian for my production. I don't use like CentOS because it's a totally different part. So and everything in Linux works, especially for Ubuntu. Like once you get
Especially
into it,
for old machines as well. Like that's the
yeah,
benefit of X2, like the
correct.
older ThinkPad machines, is that it's very, very well supported in Linux.
I do have some issue with Ubuntu before. In one of the hackathon I've been through, the Ubuntu updates screw up my graphic card in AMD because that time there's a switchable graphic card, right? That's happened during my hackathon. So that day I need to switch the laptop because I can't even use it. So that's prompt me to use Intel based, basically Intel based laptop because I won't have to worry about all of those. I don't play games also, so no point having a graphic card. And it needs to be lightweight. Previously, I have like the oldest I have D620 Latitude. So
A
that's
Dell.
a full metal alloy where
That's
you can.
heavy. That's heavy.
I mean, it's a Dell though. I mean, their
Yep.
XPS line is really expensive and heavy, but it's durable.
I'm still having it right now with me because that's my first laptop that I
Yeah,
bought.
you can carry it around so that when there's a shooting, you can use it like as a bullet protection,
Kevlar,
right?
Kevlar
Yeah.
protection.
I'm still with it.
Oh wow.
So this is the the
Mhm.
the the laptop that I get into if I don't have any laptop use. So I prefer like business class kind of laptop because I use previously I used one of the consumer based. The
Mm-hmm.
trackpad have issue, the hinge have issue, but if you go for business class, you don't have that issue.
Yeah,
The hinge will work.
I agree. Yeah. If you're
Um,
getting the Lenovo line, get the ThinkPad. It's a bit more expensive, but it's good.
Yep, definitely. So I'm still using the three X. Oh no, X230, not 240, 230.
It's not as oh yeah, it's one generation older than the 240.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
the third generation Core i5. But I think someone still like the X220
Mm.
with the
Sandy
original
Bridge.
keypad, the ThinkPad keypad.
The
For me,
seven
is
row.
the yeah,
So you're already like moved to the one
yeah, the
that's
new one.
currently what is there, but
Yeah.
they say the seven row is the best because you have your page up, page down keys like separated out on the top or something.
Yeah, and the enter key will be a blue color one, but this one is
Yeah.
the black color. But as long it works. So for me, it doesn't matter more. And currently, it serves my main driver. So all my development is using this machine.
So it's all good. It's all fast.
You will hit some hiccup sometimes when you open like the IDE. So I use IntelliJ, I use Atom, and I open like Chrome and Firefox and Slack. All of this eat RAM, especially like like IntelliJ and also the Slack.
How
Sometimes
how
they
much uh how much RAM do you have?
so I upgrade to the most 16 GB. So now
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Oh, for the
going,
Ivy Bridge, right?
yeah, Ivy Bridge.
16 gigs. Yeah.
So I'm able to run a few Docker containers. It
Mm.
doesn't bother me much right now, so I think I will still be using it.
Are you
So
thinking of
mhm.
upgrading anytime soon?
I'm thinking of doing like upgrading to Ryzen 7, but
Desktop or
the
laptop?
laptop, because Ryzen 7 have now it's better. Now it's like 8 cores basically can run on Ryzen 7 laptop. But uh, the the build quality is
Expensive.
slightly not there
Well,
yet.
ThinkPad has the Ryzen line.
Yeah,
Like you might want to take a look at that.
the
The problem
T40.
there,
Yep,
yeah. So the problem there, so the X220, the X230, it's great because you can change the battery. You have like your
correct.
your detachable battery, right? You can change your memory and you can change your
Yep,
storage. Like it's
yep,
like it's almost like a desktop but in a laptop form factor. You can just change things. You could just can't change the CPU and the graphics card because it's like built in. The new lines of ThinkPads, they're all soldered in. The memory is there. You have to buy whatever you want because you can't upgrade
correct.
it. Yeah, the graphics, etc., the same thing. The battery is also built in. You can replace it, but it's not like the removable battery that you have right now. So basically, the only thing that you can replace is the storage, which is, I think, the new ones are NVMe only. You don't even have the like
Two,
the
2.5.
ability to, yeah, to put in cheap 2.5 uh,
Mm,
2 terabyte drives. They're slow, but they're a lot of capacity. If you just need to put like files or something, you don't have the choice. You can only buy expensive NVMe storage, and so that's
correct.
the only downside with the newer ThinkPads.
Yeah, that's why I'm not buying the T series. There's an E series. E series
That
allows you to upgrade RAM. ThinkPad
is
E
cheap
series.
as well. That's plastic. So the difference, because I looked at it, I was also thinking of the same thing. The L series as well allows you to upgrade the RAM. Um, the problem is the E series are plastic. They're very cheap. They look very cheap. And the thing is, and I'll get to this more when I get to talk about mine. Is that I have a T480. I've dropped it multiple times. It's still alive because you have a roll cage on the ThinkPad. I don't know if you noticed it, but it's actually covered. Like the magnesium alloy covers the
Correct.
whole thing. If you drop it, nothing happens inside because the only thing that dents is actually the outer cover. Unlike, for
Correct.
example, you drop a MacBook, like it just dents because it's just aluminum, right? It's very soft metal. The thing is, I've dropped it's the floor that gets dents. That like the like the floor gets damaged when you drop my ThinkPad. And I mean, I've dropped it multiple times. I don't really think about it much. Everything still works. So that's the great thing about that. But I don't think the E series will survive a lot of falls. It's not going to
Uh,
survive as long as what you have right now with the X230.
yeah, because
And
I prefer the RAM to be upgradable. Like T series, they have a shouldered RAM. When things about shoulder RAM is once it broken, the whole thing you need to throw away. It's
Yeah,
not able to service. So
yeah.
I'm not really like the shouldered kind of, but yeah, now everything is shouldered, right? That's the future.
Everyone
So
wants to be thin like Apple. Yeah. We KL, you wanted to say something?
yeah, I wanted to say that the E series, like the material built in like the E series and X series, T series are reflective in their prices as well, right? That's why the E series is so affordable, right? Because of the materials they use. And yeah, I grew up in a household that had an X24, and that was in my childhood for a long time because it never died. I
Mm-hmm.
kind of want to give
Yeah.
some shout out to the comments as well. Like Jeffrey was talking
ah,
about
uh,
using Ubuntu and having graphic issues. Like I feel you, Jeffrey. That's why I use the Mac. And someone plays your piano, Tristan. Hui Mi?
Piano?
Yeah.
What piano? Ah, no,
Yeah.
that's that is my background, my green screen. Thank you for noticing. I'll try to put in a library behind me next time so that I look smart. Yeah.
Okay, so now next will be Tristan. What's
Yeah,
your laptop?
sure. My current one is I think we've talked about it, the M1 MacBook Air with 16 gigs of RAM, and like it's the base MacBook Air, so 7 GPU units, whatever. And then I just upgraded the RAM. I didn't need the storage because I don't like put movies in here or something. Like this is just uh, I bought this to be it's because because my mother wanted a new laptop. She was using my MacBook Air 2013, and it's like you notice that the the lamination of the MacBook Air like peels off and it looks horrible. It looks very blur or something. And so it's almost unusable now. And so she was asking if I can get her another one. So I bought this. Unfortunately, MCO is still on, so I can't travel. But so I'm using it right now as my development machine. I think we've talked about this as well last week. No, last month, with on the topic of Ruby on the M1 MacBook Air. I'm not using the M1 for the actual running of the programs. So I'm using this more as a very expensive thin client to another desktop. That's why, Gui Penang, I was asking you if you wanted to get a desktop instead of a laptop, because that's what I'm doing right now. I have a Lenovo ThinkCentre, so it's 5 inch. Is it 5 inch by five? Maybe 6 inch by 6 inch. I have a blog post I can post later, like talking about it. But it's a 1 liter device. It's a 8700T. It's not very expensive, but basically it's just there. It's on a corner. It's a low TDP, like 35 watts, whatever. Very low power, but 6 cores, 12 threads, and I can use VS Code remote to remote into there, forward ports. So I'm forwarding 3000, 8080, I don't know, something else like 8443 for SSL, local SSL testing, and whatever ports that I need. I forward it through VS Code remote. And basically, I have the same setup as you. I have a Linux environment, and whenever I'm developing, I'm actually on the Linux environment, but the MacBook UI. So I use Command Tab, for example, to switch applications. I have the like this that like the M1 ecosystem. So you have your Apple, uh, what whatever they call their camera thing. The keyboard is nice. So it's an expensive thing client. It's great because the battery life lasts almost like really long. Like you can go through the whole 8 hours without charging, and it charges very fast as well. So you only like charge an hour and then you're almost fully charged, and you can like go on for another 8 hours in those things. And that's like with multiple tabs, multiple YouTube thing, YouTube videos playing. So that's my current machine. Before I was using this, I was using the T480, and that was okay as well. I mean, I bought it like 2 years ago. I'm still using it if I need a like an actual Linux machine, because the Think Center is a bit inconvenient to use because I have to plug in a display, I have to plug in a mouse and a keyboard in order to actually use it as to actually use it as a Linux machine, right? And so I have my T480. It's not as fast graphically. It only has like an Intel 620 HD UHD graphics, so you can't really play games on it. But I don't really play games on those. Um, and that's also running Ubuntu 2004, the LTS version. I run LTS most of the time because I use my laptops, except for the M1, I used my laptops for work most of the time, and I need it to be stable. I don't want to waste like half a day reinstalling things or whatever just because an update broke. At least if you stick with LTS most of the time, like Jeffrey, I'm sorry for your issues, because 18 is also an LTS. It shouldn't be breaking things when you update, but 2004 so far has been good for me, and that's also the reason why I stick with Lenovo. the Think line, the Think Center, and the Think Pad. And before that, like years ago, I have the Dell XPS line as well, which because during that time, Dell launched their uh, like Linux for like developer program or something, developer laptop or something, and the XPS was their target platform, and so that's why I knew they would be supporting the Dell XPS 13 at that time. That was 2014, I think, so many years ago. So yeah, my stuff just needs to be quite stable. And right now, my workflow, the most important part of the workflow is really VS Code Remote. So you can't really do unless you start using Vim or Emacs, I guess, which is like, I mean, I can, but I'd rather like. There's a lot of conveniences for a graphical editor nowadays. Um, like GitLens, for example, is great because it puts in the commit message, not yeah who was the committer, and like the commit message beside the line that you're on, so you immediately see, okay, was this 3 years ago, did someone do this, was this recent, was this by you, even if you don't recognize the code, like who wrote this, you immediately know. It's like a git blame for every line that's always there. So that's very useful. I don't know if any like plugins for Vim or Emacs that automatically does this, that without cluttering the whole screen, because at least in a graphical UI like VS Code, you have multiple uh, you can have multiple font sizes everywhere. You can have multiple shades of a color. You can have highlighting with multiple shades, etc. I'm sure you can do that in Emacs and Vim as well, but this is just something that is very useful. And VS Code Remote makes working on a separate system uh, almost as if you're working locally, and it's been a great experience so far. So I'm running VS Code Insiders right now because the VS Code stable does not have a binary for the ARM M1, but the Insiders has it, and so it's actually bleeding edge right now. But they should be releasing whatever is on Insiders right now, 1.53, onto the stable branch. It's supposed to be the January update, but it's already February, so they should have been releasing it soon. Yeah. So yeah, that's my work machine and workflow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agree. I'm still using 18.04 because I upgrade two of my laptops to 20.04. There's issue with that. So
Mm.
when you go from 18.04 to 20.04, it breaks the UI. So
Ah,
I have no idea why it breaks, and it's much more slower put into OS. So for 18.04, it took like maybe 5 seconds to go in. If it's 20.04, it took like 20 seconds to just to go into the login page, which is yeah, for me it's not acceptable. So I can't upgrade.
usually I don't upgrade. I just wipe off the OS partition and reinstall. And so that's what I've found so far. Your home partition is separate from your OS partition. So when you reinstall, you only reinstall the OS, so you wipe the OS and then assign your home folder to the home partition, and then everything is still there. Of course, you have to reinstall everything, but it's also good because you need to just find out, okay, this was 2 years ago. I was probably in a different company. Now I have to reinstall new things. Do I even need to install Postgres? I can just do a Docker compose, so I don't even need to install it. I just need to install the client, etc. So it's something that I've discovered as a workflow in like so far, like with the march of updates, is that I separate out the OS from home, and whenever I need to upgrade, I don't upgrade in place. I just wipe OS and then reinstall, and then it's almost like confirmed to be a clean install.
Mm-hmm.
Your dot
Okay.
files are still in your home. Your dot files, your snaps are still there, so you can actually still snap the thing. So it depends on how you arrange things. Your locally compiled depends on where you install it, but your locally compiled binaries, if you install it on your slash home slash username slash local bin or something like that, then everything is still there.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So I would recommend doing that if you're using Linux. I don't know about Mac though. I'd never had to reinstall. I don't usually own Macs. The last Mac I owned was a MacBook Pro 15 2013, which I sold off to a different Rails developer a few years back. This is my new. This is my the latest Mac I own in a long while. So I don't know how you actually deal with upgrades on the Mac.
Yeah,
I haven't
upgrades on Mac.
reinstalled.
Mhm.
I haven't reinstalled my Mac like since I gotten it like almost 4 or 5 years already. So yeah, I'll probably know it when I get a get a new machine. Yeah.
Mhm.
So I have experience in upgrading a MacBook Pro to 2013 Retina, the first gen Retina. So the SSD can be upgraded because you can just buy an adapter and then buy an NVMe
Mhm.
SSD. So it's cheap right now, right? But there's a catch. You need to use the latest Mac OS. So if you use Mojave or Catalina, it will cause sleep, like the hibernate and sleeping issue, because they don't support NVMe,
Mhm.
that version of OS. So they only support it in Big Sur. So I buy the adapter from Lazada or Shopee. It's like 14 ringgit, and then SSD like 512 GB for like 200 plus, and then you get 512 out, upgraded from 128 previously, right? 2013 they have 128, so you
Mhm.
just plug it in, and now you have a better version of your MacBook. It's
Yeah,
on
and I
Retina.
guess that's one of the reasons why a lot of people recommend Rails. Well, not just Rails developers, not just Ruby developers, but developers in general. MacBooks is because they come by default with SSD nowadays. Uh, Windows laptops will still sometimes come, like, you don't know if you're not tech savvy, you will still get like hard drives, and everything is slow when you do a bundle install, when you do your npm install, your yarn install. Like, it will crawl, not because it lacks processing power, it lacks memory, but because you have a lot of small files that are being written to, and then the hard drive is just really really slow. And it's just difficult to explain that thing to to a non-tech savvy person. Like, they would say, I just bought this machine, it should be fast. Then yeah, and that's the thing, it's just easier to recommend them particular lines, and you know that MacBooks will be fast enough. Like, you don't need to think about anything else. Like, if you get a MacBook, you're almost guaranteed it will be fast enough forever, any development that you're doing.
Yep.
Yeah, it is
Correct.
expensive though. I wouldn't, like, it's depending,
Hackintosh.
it's similar to your talk.
Hackintosh. I have Hackintosh. So
So it's even
in
more
my case,
difficult to use. Like, an update can mess up the whole thing.
yes. So you
Yeah.
don't upgrade. I use it because of the Safari stuff that I need to run.
Uh,
But yeah,
yeah, a
um,
cheap Hackintosh, if you want a cheap Hackintosh for testing on Safari and you don't have a Mac, you buy one of the Intel Nooks. They are quite cheap nowadays. The small 4 inch by 4 inch by 2 inch things, they have, like, it's because it's always the same. It's the same device everywhere else. There's, like, you only change the memory, the hard drive, and whatever. But there are Hackintosh instructions, and it's almost guaranteed you will have it running. The only thing that you don't have running natively is Wi-Fi, and so you need like a Wi-Fi dongle, or like you just plug it into Ethernet. But you have a full-blown
Mac
Hackintosh
Mini.
system running. Yeah, a Mac Mini that you can run Safari on, or you can even like compile Swift programs if you're into that.
Correct.
Yeah. So I would recommend the Intel NUC if you're doing Rails development and you want to test your front end with Safari, which is not as a big a deal right now because Safari is now using WebKit, and so it's not that different from what Chrome does. I guess the only thing is, if you're doing um, bleeding edge JavaScript development and you're using like Chrome specific things and you want to see if Safari supports them, then that's when you have to do it. But most of the time, if especially if you're using Rails, you're not going to do something like that.
Yep. Agree.
Yeah.
I think we
And
have
actually,
questions.
speaking of that, yeah, Jeffrey was asking if we discussed Rails new Turbo. I don't think we have. I don't think I've looked at it yet. This is similar to how they did it with This started with PJAX from way back when, right? Like PJAX, where you actually send HTML and then you just like document writes the whole payload into your document. Have you looked at it before? You look at it,
Um,
anyone?
haven't tried it.
I
That's
was
Maybe
just
also
something that. Mhm.
yeah, I want to say I was just looking at some tutorials yesterday. I think GoRails had a tutorials on
Mm.
um, Hotwire, I think they call it. Yeah, it's quite like there's a lot more reactivity. Like anytime you change a model, for example, you add a new a new model. It's for example the tutorial idea was like creating a fake Twitter, right? And he was like, okay, so every time you save a tweet, like he was doing it in the backend, like he will manually create a tweet object, and then it will like almost, of course, he's doing it on local, but it was almost instantly appear because he was like showing a
Mhm.
timeline of sorts, right? And then, yeah,
Also, wait, so there's a WebSocket involved somewhere.
I don't. Is it? I'm not sure. Is it exactly WebSocket? Um, I think it uses action cable. I'm not too sure. I didn't. I just watched the tutorial like on the background and just like watch it, like see it sometimes. So I didn't actually deal into it yet. But I think it's very convenient if you want to have reactivity on
Mm.
like model changes, but you don't want to write like a lot of JavaScript and all. Like for me, like this use case is very convenient. Last year, right when I was doing something like this thing exactly did. So yeah.
Yeah. Jeffrey confirmed, so everything is sent over WebSocket. So I'm asking because this changes the deployment a bit, because now your like you need to have two. I don't think Puma and like, or I don't know what else you do. Uh, Puma doesn't have support for long running processes that can, because WebSockets basically you keep a connection open, and so it's long running on the server as well. Like, and then depending on how you implement it, you may run out of like open connections to your server, and so most of the time you'll run a separate WebSocket server that multiplexes the connections, so you don't actually like keep everything open all at the same time. You don't run out of like open connections. So I guess that's an issue with the WebSockets. I haven't really looked at WebSockets for the longest time right now. I guess this is the issue with if you're developing on legacy projects that you don't really get to work on the newer stuff. I don't think that we're going to transition everything, for example. So we have a React and a Rails legacy project. I don't think we're going to be transitioning everything to Turbo, for example. Like it's much more economical to just continue on working with the React code base. And that one doesn't need WebSockets because everything basically happens at the front end and then you use the Rails application as an API. So I think similar to what Louis was asking. So whereas Turbo most likely is like there's a lot of Rails magic involved where you write helpers, like just like the Form 4 helpers or whatever, all of these things. You also write it on the front end, and then that sets up the magical connections. And the WebSocket is also there. It's great for local development because everything runs on the Rails process when you do Rails S. But the deployment, making it more efficient, I guess, is where the issue is. I guess Hotwire is similar to LiveView. LiveView is the Elixir one, right? And I think that's where they got the inspiration from.
yeah. There's a new, I think, new framework or library coming up, Strada. If you go to hotwire.dev, there's a Strada. It's basically trying to standardize the way to develop mobile hybrid application.
Yeah, which would be great because the biggest issue with all of these things like Turbo, LiveView, etc., is because each programming language and each framework has their own standards. You basically can't mix and match them. That is your front end. You don't have any other choice but to use the front end because like nothing else will understand whatever you put there, right? They're not communicating the same standards over the WebSocket, for example. Like let's say let's go back to Sidekick. Sidekick is long has been old enough and long enough there that other people have written job handlers that are not necessarily in Ruby. You have like Go handlers, you have Crystal handlers, have Rust handlers, etc. Because your job description in Sidekick is really just an entry in Redis. And if you can read that format, and you can follow the same standards. Like, okay, you read it, and then you basically like pop the thing on the queue on the Redis Redis stack. Then uh, you're all fine. Sidekick wouldn't care whether it's a Ruby job that ran, or a Rust job, or a Go job. It's for all it knows, it's just like an entry in the Redis, right? This is very different from all of these WebSocket things on like Livewire or a Hotwire, LiveView. They have different ways to communicate. This is different from what was that they did in Rails before Hotwire. That's also with WebSockets. Uh, Dewey, you're still muted.
Is it stimulus or action cable?
Action cable, yeah, action cable. Like for example, action cable. That one has a clear, well, not really clear, but it's open source, so that one has a standard already. And actually, you have different implementations of action cable servers. We've talked about this before as well on previous Ruby meetups, where you can run it like a Go action cable server. That's not the same as the one in Rails, and then it's more performant because you have like your concurrency primitives and Go a lot better. So your action cable requests, because there's just a WebSocket, which is an HTML standard. Uh, I don't know, HTTP standard. I don't know, a web standard. It's it can communicate with an action cable server that speaks the same language. It doesn't need to be written in Ruby, or it doesn't need to be part of Rails. In this case, this was written in Go, and there's also an Elixir implementation of action cable server, and that is what is missing with all of these Hotwire, LiveView, similar things, where it's not it's not messages, it's not JSON that's being passed through and from. It's actual HTML that's going through, and then you're basically document writing the thing on the other end. There's no standardized approach, and I guess Strata, that the one that you're talking about, is trying to do that so that you can eventually mix and match. You can have live view JavaScript stuff on your front end, but with a Hotwire server, and they still understand each other.
Yeah, probably they said they will release it on 2021. So yeah, should be soon.
I will see. It's still quite new. I don't know about until that one gets standardized. I'm not sure if that's something to be adopted, because it becomes very difficult to change your front end, um, because you are very much tied to your backend framework. Unlike, for example, if you're using API and JSON, because your payload is basically it's not tied to a particular framework. It's a JSON payload, let's say, or uh, um, what's the Go equivalent? RTP. I forgot the RCP RPC. Google the Go RC remote procedure call RPC. That package transferred over, it doesn't matter what is the client, doesn't matter what is the backend, as long as they speak that protocol, then it's fine. So that's why you can have a React front end, or developers change, they like to write view front components. Oh, okay, no, we're doing web components. Okay, we'll put web components, or like maybe just jQuery for some things. They're all okay. They all can mix with each other. They can all change depending on what the flavor of the developers prefer, and then the server basically stays the same because you're all speaking the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Yeah, Jeffrey is
Yeah.
saying that Hotwire embraces Ruby is too much. Well, that's DHH for you. He's very opinionated, and he thinks Rails is the best thing ever, which I don't like. From his viewpoint, I wouldn't disagree, because he is the creator, and he would want to make the best thing ever. Because otherwise, why would you even make something at all if it's not the best thing that you can do? Um, yeah, but those are the issues. You want to you he wants to make it so that the whole Rails framework dominates even the front end, because Rails used to be the way you do front end. Like, there was no React, there's no Vue, like there's only Form 4, and like the scaffold that you have and all of these things, right? And that was how you did front end applications, and that was magical, and that was easy, and that was fast. That was in 2013. And then now you have all of these new things. You have your JavaScript stuff, and Rails was relegated into the background. And you can't really survive without JavaScript, but you don't have to write JavaScript, at least in his thinking. And so, if you can write helpers that feel like Rails, that feel like Ruby, and are deeply integrated with Rails, then you capture back that kind of magical feeling that we had when we first started with Rails. I guess in the
Correct.
front wire validation, you don't really need to do that yourself, because I would think that the validation is already on your model, and it would be easy to just inspect your model and then do the same validations on the front end. Like if you say validates presence of your name, then that's also similar to thing. I can easily write something that introspects the model, what does it validate, and then writes the same loop of code that validates a thing on your forms, for example, which is the same thing as what you're doing with Form 4, right? And then you have your flash minute, etc. It's just more interactive right now. Yeah, we have a few more questions. Oh yeah, maybe Gui, you can answer this. The old operating systems unable to load modern websites, but the browser is the latest Firefox. Have you
Older
encountered this? I don't think
modern
I've
website.
ever had. Well, luckily enough, I've never had to work with clients with old operating systems. We just
Um,
use Windows 10.
would OS fail to load modern website? Oh, okay. So it depends on the spec. So now a lot of latest browser will have a lot of features, right? But when they detect the hardware is not compatible, they will turn off automatically. Especially
Mm.
like the rendering, WebGL stuff, right? So I have Atom, basically Atom netbook. So it's running on Atom N270. It's very old, and it won't even support Chrome because Chrome already moved out of 32 bits. So now only Firefox can run. Um, it having issue to load websites that's having a lot of JavaScript stuff because it will just hog the whole RAM. Um, the so in terms of JavaScript, it's really rely on like how much hardware you have because they will tweak your browser to support all browsers no all hardware, just that they will turn off certain features because your browser can't do that, especially when you first load YouTube. If you try YouTube, you will know how bad your hardware is
Yeah,
even
well, that's
loading.
because you don't have the decoder. Like Atoms don't have like the H.264 decoder in hardware, so you have to do it in software. And it's going to be super slow.
Yep. And they don't support Flash anymore, right? If previously there's Flash, at least you can see something. Now they take the Flash all out, so it's just bad. Like in terms of different browser uh, version, so for different release, once they saw that uh, your hardware doesn't meet their minimal requirement, they don't really update for you anymore. Um, like end
I
of
don't know.
life. Like
I
Win
think
7, Win XP, they don't even allow you to install
hmm,
uh,
I don't even know
latest
if I
version.
can find a laptop that I can install Windows XP on, because just finding the drivers is going to be a problem because you still have CD-ROMs, and I probably lost all of those CD-ROMs.
I
And
still have this is originally XP, so I'm still able to run XP if I want to, but
oh yeah, but can you install it, and can you actually install the drivers? Because
yeah.
that's the problem. I can install XP. I have, like, you have ISOs everywhere, but to install
Because
it
this
on a
originally support XP.
mm,
Latitude D620 released with XP, so it's confirmed will have XP.
I guess you can run it
Uh,
as a virtual machine. So I guess if I'm troubleshooting this, I'll run it on a virtual machine and try it out. But
mm.
I luckily have never had to experience a customer support issue where they're running an old Windows version. and or a very old like Internet Explorer browser, for
Yes,
example, right?
IE6, IE5.
So I have to do that. Usually, we'll just ask them, please upgrade to Chrome. Mostly, the suggestion is Chrome because it usually like it will usually work, and Google is known more well known than Mozilla, right? Like you won't you can say alternatively Firefox, but most of them will have heard of Google more than Mozilla. And yeah, and just upgrade because it's going to be like a security issue or something like that. But fortunately, we never had to. I've never had to be in a position to support Internet Explorer or Windows, something Windows other than Windows 10.
Yeah, yeah. I have issue with that supporting stuff, but yeah, like the JavaScript standard like ES6. If you go for old IE, there's no ES6. You can't even run ES6 stuff because
Mhm.
everything needs to define in var rather than LET like let. Doesn't, yeah, it doesn't work. So
Okay. I'll put the link. This is the Lenovo um, Think Center that I talked about. So I put it on YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook. Uh, do you want to share the page? Yeah, I have pictures. So it's the same size as a Mac Mini, and I have like comparison photos of the whole thing. This is what I'm running as my production, well, like my work machine basically, and I'm remoting in. Do you want to share the screen so that everyone can see as well, and then we can quickly take a look at it?
Yep. Oh, let me see if I can copy this without it.
And then yeah,
Oh, hold on. Yeah, you just show the link. Let me just search
okay.
for it.
Maybe I can try it out. How do I? Maybe can I share even if I'm not? Okay, I can share.
Yeah, you can check.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, this one. So I'll scroll up. So this is the Think Center. Like this is a Mac Mini below it. So it's the same size. This is the Nook. This is the thing that we were talking about, the easily Hackintoshtable mini laptop. Well, it has laptop insides, but there's no display, there's no keyboard, etc. So you have laptop speeds, but the form factor of a 4 inch by 4 inch by 2 inch uh, like box. This is like I think this is 6 inches and 6 inch square by 1 inch. This is a Mac Mini side by side, so it's not that large. If you know a Mac Mini is quite small, so it's quite good. Um, this is price comparison and the number of options you can get. That time, when did I buy this? Like a few years ago. That was a 3.6K. With the Mac Mini is 3.4K. It's not that bad. It's an i7 versus an i3 in the Mac Mini. I didn't need a Thunderbolt port, so that's where the price differential happens. And then this the back of the thing. You have no shortage of ports, and the one I got had like this cage where you can put a drive on top, so you can even use this as a desktop home theater PC. Back when drives were still a thing, not anymore, and that's the thing. And this is the insides of it. So if you want to take a look at it, this is the memory basically is upgradable with laptop memory, and then you have like just one. So the higher end uh, think centers have another slot for NVMe, but in this lower end one, this is the cheapest that they have. They actually don't put the they have the pads, but they don't have the peripheral, so you can't install um, another NVMe drive. This is all toolless, so you'll see that there are no screws. This is so think centers are usually used for IT deployments, and with IT deployments, you want repair to be as fast as possible. So you don't need to be carrying around screwdrivers, for example. This one has a screwdriver thing, but you actually have this, which you can fold down, and so it's almost like a thumb screw. You don't need a screwdriver for that. See, it's like this, and you slide it off, and then everything is just it's just easily removable. You just slide things off. The memory, you don't need a tool for that. This is you don't need a screw for the NVMe. You just have like this stopper, a blue stopper, and that's it. So it's actually quite good. And this is the T480 that I talked about as well for my development machine before this Mac M1.
Stuff.
Yeah,
Uh,
cool. I think those are all of the questions that we have. Do you guys want to add something else? I don't know what Xian Xiang Huang was talking about when he said Shopee doesn't care.
I think you're talking about the IP address for Lazada. Like they
That was
were.
Lazada though. Shopee was okay. I mean, I didn't have any issues with Shopee. The only issue I have with Shopee is that I always get um, the SMS thing to confirm the credit card. Whereas for Lazada, I think if you purchase under like below 100, I think, or something, then it just goes through, which is very convenient. And I don't have to hunt for my phone to find out what the SMS is, or even wait for it, because sometimes the SMS doesn't even arrive when you're purchasing something. So yeah.
Interesting. Okay, I think that's pretty much
Yeah,
it for.
Jeffrey, sorry, this one. Yes, this is a problem if you don't have another way, like another laptop to use, like a backup
Yeah,
laptop. So now I'm
correct.
in a position to have a backup, like something that I'm like a laptop that I'm not using, like a T480, for example, or the M1. So I can use either or if something breaks. Like for example, my M1 had a problem with uh with my Apple ID. Like I can't log in through any Apple ID. It turns out Docker for Mac, the new Docker beta for Mac prevents certain things going through, and then you can and Apple ID couldn't authenticate with Apple servers. So I had to actually use a different laptop so that I can troubleshoot on the M1. So without a separate laptop, then yes, it's going to be a problem, and you have to like be on the phone, let's say, to search for things, because the thing that you use to solve problems is the one that's broken. So that's a problem there.
Yeah. So as long as you stick to the stable distro like
Mm.
Ubuntu, Manjaro, Mint, those are quite stable. Shouldn't be that much problem. If you go for experimental stuff, experimental. uh, yeah,
Yeah,
I
don't
do.
use treat your work laptop as a business investment that it because it makes you money. So try not to mix play and experimentation with your work stuff.
Agree,
So
agree.
otherwise, it's going to be a problem. Which is why I really think that my workflow right now combines both of the best of both worlds, because my actual work stuff is on that Think Center, right? Even if this M1 suddenly, like Big Sur updates and everything goes to hell and everything doesn't work anymore, it's still okay because I can just put a keyboard and a mouse and a monitor. It's inconvenient, but I can still use it. Everything, all my work is not destroyed, right? It's not going to be inaccessible, unlike what happened to Jeffrey, where the display driver basically just broke. So, but I can also still continue on like experimenting on this M1 because it's not going to affect my work machine. I don't know how you combine your work and your play and your hacking together, but that one works for me.
That's also the reason why I don't use Windows 10.
Mm,
Luckily, I put it as a alternative. I have Windows 10 installed in dual boot, so somehow Windows 10 updates corrupt the whole OS. You can't even back up the data because everything is encrypted. Once you do Windows 10 update, it will encrypt your hard disk. So
mm.
there's no way you can back up using Linux or whatever. It's gone. Basically, once you update Windows 10 and it crashes, everything is gone. You can't even get the data out. That's why I don't use Windows 10 at all because it's just one experience enough for me. After that experience, all the files is gone because I can't even get it out. It's encrypted because yeah, Windows 10 by default you can turn it off, not encrypting, but once the Windows 10 update runs, it will encrypt again. So it's like, why, why you want to do this? We want to back up. If your updates fail, we still able to get our data back, but you decided to encrypt and then fail the update, gone.
Yeah,
That's like,
it's difficult to recover. You need a proper offsite backup on that one.
yeah. I did try using Windows 10 installer and go into the folder, but it's not worth the effort. Uh, but so eventually I just wipe everything, treat it as loss. So until now I'm still using Linux because I know that if anything happens, I just plug out the hard disk, go to another computer, backup, reinstall. Everything is still there. Yeah.
We have one more comment that I'd really want to highlight. Max Kobmara is saying happy with WSL2, so Windows subsystem for Linux on Windows 10. When it came out, like both WSL1 and WSL2, I tried it as well. The only issue that I really have there is some code bases will treat 0.0.0.0 as local host. And apparently 0.0.0.0 is not a valid, it's not a proper IP address. We are used to it on Mac and Linux, but on Windows, if you do 0.0.0.0, it's not actually a proper, it's not, doesn't actually map to localhost. I don't know if it maps to it right now. And so it actually breaks a lot of the servers that hard codes localhost to 0.0.0.0. And if you'll find some Stack Overflow entries that explain why this is actually the correct, like Windows is actually treating it correctly, and Linux and Mac are not, basically not doing it correctly, but everyone else is doing it because Linux and Mac are doing it. So that was the issue that I had with that. So I couldn't like fully go in the WSL2 route that time when I was trying it out, because that particular project has hard coded in some routes with 0.0.0.0 and instead of localhost, and it's just a big complex task to change them.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's one more question on there.
Yes. So Jeffrey, who was on YouTube, now is on Twitch, um, is asking if we've heard of the Compendious Punks course by Ruby Tapas. I haven't really gone on a new course recently, but it's a good recommendation. Maybe we can take a look at it. Um, what I have though are a lot of books, and here's a tip, not necessarily Ruby or Rails related, but a developer related one. There's this organization called acn.org. Let me uh, let me paste that URL onto our chat. So basically, it's a membership site, Association of I forgot, Computing Machinery, uh, and if you're a member, you get access to Safari Online. So basically, the whole stable of O'Reilly books for free, along with your membership. And the membership is 15 US dollars per year. So an annual 15 US dollars. And it's very, very cheap, much cheaper than if you buy Safari subscription by yourself. So you can get an acn.org membership, renew it every year, and you get Safari Books Online access along with your membership. And that's where I've been getting all of my learning so far, like just all of the books from Safari Online. Because it's not just O'Reilly books, but you have Manning books there as well. You have your um, uh, the pragmatic programmer site, like their books there as well. So this is actually a very, very good resource, and I would recommend that you all go subscribe. It's only 15 US dollars, but the whole, like even the video courses on Safari Books Online, they're also very, very useful. need to brush up on your React, there's a lot of things there. I think even some of the Udemy courses, like the Maximilian courses, there some of them are also on Safari Books Online. I'm not sure, but they like it's not it shouldn't be a big issue for them to go from Udemy to Safari Books. Like you just need to ink a new contract or something, unless you have exclusivity with Udemy or something like that, because you just have a bigger audience to get to get your revenue from. But yeah, I would recommend that if you are looking for good resources, be a member of acm.org, and in the course of being a member, get a free subscription to Safari Books Online. Which is why I haven't been going through other tutorials like the Ruby Tapas one, but it's something to take a look at. Have you, GUI Kale and GUI Penang, have you looked at it before? Or are you members of acm.org?
No, I haven't signed up. I'm thinking whether this is tax deductible though, because we can deduct on books,
It's
right?
15 US per year. I don't know if that's even worth tax deducting. And even in my case, for example, um, I have like it's part of my educational benefit from the company, so I just like reimburse the thing.
Mm. Yeah, can check out. Good stuff.
So
Good
it's
stuff.
you want to go to the professional membership because you're a professional. That's the so it's different. It's different prices per per country. I think uh, like for example for the US it's 99 USD. Uh, but if you mention that you're from Malaysia, I think it's cheaper, like 15 USD. Let me just confirm. Where is this country? Malaysia. That doesn't update. Special rates for the residents of developing countries. So yeah, and I will put in. Yeah, okay. There you go. The cost is. Oh no, sorry, not 15. It's 40. 40 US dollars. Still cheap. I think the cheapest that I found was 15, but it's not Malaysia. So it's still cheap, but um, it's very well worth the price. It just takes a bit of time to find out where the special rate is. Yeah, Ruby Tapas is 18 US a month. That's quite expensive. And that's per user, right? They don't want like a whole company to have just a single subscription and everyone's just sharing the thing.
Correct.
Yep.
Correct.
All right.
Good stuff. Yeah.
Wow, 35 US a month.
That's a lot.
All right.
Okay, I guess I didn't really didn't expect we could fill up this 2 hour session just by this. But well, thanks for everyone. I didn't expect so much participation from everybody. But yeah, thanks everyone who participated through chat.
Well,
Jeffrey.
if you're here, so everyone who's here right now and who's gonna be watching this for the next month, I think next month will be an interesting uh, like meetup, right?
Yes, we have a planned talk. At least I can't exactly remember next one.
It's by
one
Vonage.
yes,
Vonage used to be. I think Vonage bought Twilio. I think, or did they rebrand to Twilio? I forgot what the
No, no, no. Vonage is the one that we
Nexmo.
met.
Nexmo.
Yeah,
Nexmo. Sorry, Nexmo is the competitor to Twilio, which was bought by was it Verizon? I forgot. So there's a lot of like um, mergers and acquisitions on this thing, but Vonage is the one that is was planning to have a
next month.
talk next meetup, right?
Correct. Yep.
they
Yeah.
actually have two
So we have
topics over through March and April. But yes,
yeah.
they will give a talk
Yeah.
next week.
So, do you want a teaser? Are we able to give them a teaser of what they're talking about next meetup?
I think so. Actually, it's in Slack's general channel. So if anybody is there, they could actually see the topic. I think they're going to talk about RBS. I think one of the
What is
topics was about
RBS?
Ruby typing,
Mm-hmm.
Ruby 3, Ruby
Oh,
typing,
not
and I think
Sorbet. So they're not fans of Sorbet. They're fans of RBS, the official one.
I believe so. On top of my head, I think that's. Oh, sorry, I was wrong. It's actually sorbet.
Oh, okay, Sorbet, not
Yeah, it's
RBS.
actually sorbet, not
Okay.
RBS. I'm thinking it was. I remember it was a type, a static type. I assume it was RBS. No, it's actually sorbet. That and they're also planning to give a sentiment analysis talk
Most
as
likely tied to
well.
their Bone Age API thing, probably.
Most likely.
Uh,
Yep.
so if you have questions, like I already have like questions like, how do you, what exactly does sentiment analysis do? Like, do you pick out words? How do you determine context? Is it by matching like sequences of words and then like with particular sentiments, and so that's how you get context on those things. How do you get context from a sentence before the current sentence, let's say, like, or are any lines just separated separately, right? So there are like multiple techniques, and it would be great. So it would be great to like if you have questions there, and if you have questions for Sorbet as well. And if you're interested in learning about Sorbet in an actual production environment with like a big team, like basically the Bone Age team, I'm guessing that they're doing that. Then that's the meetup, and that's the talk uh, to go for, because that person who's talking will be very experienced in these things, much more than us, because we've never really done uh, that large amounts of typing on production code bases. We've tried it out, we've tried a few things, but work stuff, features need to be written, and we just need to write them on things that we're familiar with right now, and we can't really experiment so much. But these people, they have the budgets to experiment on the new things, and so it will be great to learn from them. So prepare your questions. It will be an interesting meetup next month.
All right. Let's see. I was gonna wrap up. I think even though we tease some of these talks, we're always looking for speakers, right? So if anybody is interested to giving a talk, it doesn't have to be like super serious and all. It's just a meetup, right? So we're running a
Yeah.
conference. So yeah,
I'd
just
like to
come.
hear about experiences of Ruby and Rails development on Windows subsystem for Linux, because I've tried it, and like I mentioned, it didn't really work out for me. But uh, that was when WSL and WSL2 were quite new. Now they're actually part. So you actually have to be in Windows Insider program to actually experience it, to use it. Now it's part of the Windows update or something, right? If you update your Windows to the latest version, then you have it. I haven't been using it because I haven't been using Windows machines for some time. So I would love to have someone do a talk, or just like a discussion on WSL2 and Rails development.
Mhm. Cool stuff.
Okay, I think we probably read up. We almost reached our intended time anyway. Wow, two hours. I'm still surprised if we managed to fill up the slot. Just the three of us, and of course everyone watching.
Yeah,
But yeah, thanks everyone for
thanks.
joining us this week.
Max says he'll try to put something together.
We'll look forward. Just reach out to us through Slack or Facebook, and we'll schedule a session like anytime.
Happy early Chinese New Year,
Chinese
and
New Year.
keep safe. See you next
MCO,
time.
he said already.
Yeah, still be online next month because of MCO, most likely. Hopefully by April we get to do a meetup. I'm not sure. I don't know, but we'll see.
Yeah,
I
keep
guess
safe.
it's unlikely. All right, thank you, everybody.
Bye.